It's a job that demands grit, resilience, and a tolerance for solitude that most folks just wouldn't understand. Miles and miles of desolate highways, the only sound the hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of the CB radio. It's enough to make anyone feel isolated, vulnerable. But for some truckers, the loneliness is the least of their worries. Because out there, in the vast emptiness of the open road, there are whispers of something else. Something sinister lurking in the shadows. Something that preys on those who dare to travel alone. This is Mike. He'd been hauling freight across the country for the better part of 2 decades, seen just about everything there was to see on the road. Sunrises that painted the desert sky in impossible colours, storms that turned highways into raging rivers. Yeah, Mike was a seasoned road warrior, a man who thought he'd seen it all, but that was before the night he met the hitchhiker. It was a stretch of highway most folks avoided, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through a desolate expanse of desert. Mike was on a tight deadline though, so he pushed on, the only sound the rumble of his engine and the mournful whistle of the wind. Around 2 a.m. his headlights caught a figure standing by the side of the road, thumb outstretched. It was a young woman, her face obscured by the shadows of a wide-brimmed hat. Now, Mike wasn't usually one to pick up hitchhikers. He'd heard the stories, knew the risks. But there was something about this woman, something vulnerable in the way she stood there that made him pull over. Maybe it was the late hour, maybe it was the loneliness that seemed to hang heavy in the air. But whatever it was, Mike rolled down the window and the woman climbed in. She didn't speak, just offered a small, sad smile and a nod of thanks. Mike tried to make small talk, ask her where she was headed, where she was coming from, that sort of thing. But the woman just shook her head, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. Mike figured she was just tired, or maybe shy. He drove on, the miles ticking by under the relentless glare of his headlights. It was then that he noticed something strange. The woman, she hadn't moved, not an inch since she got in the truck. Her gaze was still fixed straight ahead, her hands folded neatly in her lap. He glanced at her reflection in the side mirror. That's when his blood ran cold. The woman's face, the one hidden in the shadows of her hat, it was gone. There was nothing there, just a void where her features should have been. Mike slammed on the brakes, the truck skidding to a stop on the shoulder of the road. He spun around in his seat, heart pounding in his chest. But the passenger seat was empty. This is Sarah, a young woman with a thirst for adventure and a spirit as big as the open road. She'd been saving up for months, dreaming of the day she'd get behind the wheel of her own rig. And now, here she was, hauling her first solo load across America. It was a clear night, the stars like diamonds scattered across the sky. Sarah was enjoying the peace of the open road, the gentle hum of the engine, her only companion. She was lost in her thoughts when she noticed something in her rearview mirror. A pair of headlights, burning bright, gaining on her fast. She wasn't too worried at first. It was a highway after all, and people drove fast. But the headlights remained, fixed on her like a predator stalking its prey. They were so close now that they filled her mirrors, blindingly bright. A knot of unease tightened in Sarah's stomach. She tried to reason with herself. It was probably just some impatient driver, but something about the way those headlights never wavered sent a shiver down her spine. She reached for the CB radio, hoping to catch a friendly voice, but the airwaves were silent, filled only with static. The headlights were closer now, so close she could almost feel the heat of the engine behind her. Fear, cold and sharp, washed over her. She had to do something. She couldn't just keep driving, not with those headlights glued to her bumper. She thought about pulling over, but decided against it. She wasn't going to let fear paralyze her. She was going to outrun it. She slammed her foot down on the gas pedal, the truck surging forward. The truck rattled and shook as she pushed it harder, faster. But the headlights in her mirror kept pace, relentless. She glanced at her side mirror, trying to get a better look. But the glare of the headlights was blinding. Miles turned into minutes, minutes that stretched into an eternity. The highway seemed to stretch on forever. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, her hands slick with sweat. She didn't know how much longer she could keep this up. She was running on adrenaline and fear. Just when she thought she could take no more, she saw a sign up ahead. An exit, her only chance. She gripped the steering wheel and wrenched it to the right, taking the exit at breakneck speed. The truck screeched in protest, tires struggling for grip. She risked a glance in her rear-view mirror. The headlights followed, unwavering in their pursuit. She was on a deserted side road now, the darkness pressing in on all sides. She had no idea where she was going, but she didn't care. All that mattered was putting as much distance between her and those headlights as possible. Chapter 3. The Forgotten Cargo. They called him Dave No Questions Davidson. Not because he was rude, mind you, but because in his line of work some things were better left unsaid. He'd been hauling cargo for longer than he cared to remember, seen his fair share of strange deliveries and shady characters. But this job, this one was different. This one felt wrong from the start. It started with a call in the dead of night, a gruff voice on the other end offering him a hefty sum to haul a single container. No questions asked. The money was good, too good to refuse, so Dave took the job. He arrived at the pickup location, a desolate warehouse on the outskirts of town, just as the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon. The container was waiting for him, perched on the back of a flatbed truck, its metal skin scarred with rust and time. It was old, ancient even, its surface devoid of any markings or identifying features. Just a hulking, silent box, shrouded in an unsettling air of mystery. The men who met him were shadows themselves, their faces obscured by the fading light and the brims of their hats. They didn't offer their names, and Dave didn't ask. He signed the delivery papers, his hand lingering on the pen for a moment, a prickle of unease crawling up his spine. The delivery instructions were simple, almost too simple. Drive the container to a remote location in the mountains, leave it at the designated coordinates, and don't look inside. Don't ask questions. Just deliver the cargo and walk away. As Dave drove through the night, the truck groaning under the weight of its mysterious cargo, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The hair on the back of his neck stood on end, and he found himself constantly checking his mirrors, searching for any sign of following headlights. The deeper he drove into the mountains, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of pine needles and damp earth. The forest pressed in on either side of the road, a wall of darkness illuminated only by his headlights. He reached the designated drop-off point just as the first rays of dawn were beginning to paint the sky with hues of purple and orange. It was a clearing in the heart of the forest, a circle of silence and shadows. He got out of the truck, the silence of the forest pressing in on him like a physical presence. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears, loud and insistent. He walked towards the container, his hand hovering over the release latch. He knew he shouldn't do it. He knew he should just get back in the truck and drive away, forget he ever took this job. But curiosity, that age-old human flaw, got the better of him. He had to know what was inside that container. With a deep breath, he threw open the container doors. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness, a void that seemed to swallow the light. And then he saw it. Nothing. The container was empty. These stories are just a glimpse into the unsettling experiences truck drivers can face on the road. While many journeys are routine, some lead into the unknown, where reality and nightmare blur together. Like, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Next time you're on a lonely highway, keep your eyes open. You never know what might be lurking in the darkness.